Hi, welcome to the Guitar Department. I'm your host, Joe Alton. On today's episode, we're going to be talking largely about finger picking. We're going to go over what's called the PEMA system. We're going to learn the song I just played, Is There Anybody Out There, by Pink Floyd. We're going to talk about the proper way to finger pick the song Blackbird by the Beatles, because everybody on the internet gets this wrong. And we've got our special guest, Stephen Kennedy, one of the best classical players in the state. Keep your eyes on the screen. It's going to be a good show. The song Is There Anybody Out There by Pink Floyd is found on the album The Wall, and it's really a duet between a classical guitar and a violin. The violin sort of comes in later, and there's actually about 45 seconds to a minute of some creepy volume swells and the phrase, "Is there anybody out there?" being heavily whispered into a microphone. But if you power through that, you end up with this almost James Bond sounding chordal movement where we start with an A minor chord. And with the A minor, you might notice I've actually got my fingers flipped from the standard way of playing an A minor. Normally, I would play it with my middle finger on the 4th string, my ring finger on the 3rd string. But for the purposes of this song, because of the movement in the song, I'm going to flip those fingers around and finger it sort of an unconventional way. And what that's going to do, it's going to allow me to move my 3rd finger from the E to the F, and then eventually plant my pinky down on the F sharp. And then I'm going to move that back down to the 3rd fret for the F, and then back to the E on that 2nd fret. And then I'm going to use the 3rd finger exclusively for the rest of the melody. But the real story of what's happening here is on the right hand. We're going to use what's called the PEMA system. And PEMA stands for the Spanish terms for these 4 fingers. The thumb is pulgar, the index finger, which I refer to it as index instead of pointer because it's an I, is indice in Spanish. And then we've got the middle finger is medio, and then angular is the 3rd finger. So P-I-M-A. And since classical guitar is largely influenced by Spanish music and as Spanish musicians, they landed on the Spanish terms for the fingers. So P is thumb, I is index, M is middle, those two are easy to remember, and then A is ring finger. So keeping that in mind, what we're going to do with our right hand is line up 1 finger per string on the bottom 3 strings. The 1st string will be the ring finger, the A, the M finger, the middle finger will take the 2nd string, 3rd string will be the pointer finger, and the thumb will take everything else, almost without exception in this song. So that does vary a bit. If you get into classical guitar, you'll notice there are things that don't quite adhere to that rule, but that's, if you'll excuse the expression, the rule of thumb. So what we're going to do is line up our A minor chord with the ring finger on the 4th string, and then we are going to just, starting on the 4th string with the thumb, index, middle, ring, middle, index, and then thumb, index. And that is the 8 beats of our measure. This is in 4/4 time, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Just like that, that's our first measure. And then the right hand stays the same through most of this progression. So we're going to move the 3rd finger to the 3rd fret on F. This creates an F major 7 chord for those keeping track at home. The same PEMA system there, P-I-M-A-M-I-P-I. Then we'll go to the pinky finger on the F sharp. This creates an F sharp half diminished chord. And then back to our F. And then at this point, we sort of abandon that pattern a little bit and we use just half of it. We're going to go back to the E for the A minor chord. And we're just going to do that, just those 4 beats, 1 and 2 and then for 3 and 4 and, we're going to take the ring finger off and expose the open D string. Then we're going to bring this up to the C on the 5th string. The thumb will follow, so it'll play the 5th string. These 3 fingers stay on those bottom 3 strings. and then down to 2 for the B, and then that leads us into a full A minor chord. Now, there are a few ways that you can do this next part, but it's really an alternation between two patterns. We're going to go all the way from the A string all the way down to the E string and then back up. And if you noticed on the right hand, I sort of did a sweep with my thumb there. So it's thumb, thumb, index, middle, ring, middle, index, and then thumb again. And then the next set of the pattern will be thumb, thumb, index, middle, index, thumb, thumb, thumb. That one can be altered if you're less comfortable using your thumb so much. You can move the whole PIMA system up a string and just do it that way. For me, it's easier to keep these on the bottom 3 strings and use the thumb a little more heavily. Just like that, that's our last 2 measures, and then we're going to play those 2 measures a second time. Before we reprise our main theme again. And again, for the main theme, we're going back to that E with the thumb, then F, then up to F sharp, back down to F, and then they throw us a bit of a curveball on this one. It doesn't go straight back to E. You stay on the F, and you go F, A, C, so you're playing just an F triad, but thumb, pointer, middle, and then thumb on the E, and down to the D, and then you start your pattern just like that. And then you start from there, thumb on the D string, not moving the melody yet, thumb on the D string, and then we're going to go thumb, thumb, open. So those 3 are all thumb hits, 3, 2, 0. We have a slight pause right there for the last half of that measure, because we just sort of come down the end of the chord. And then we're going to enter into what I guess we would refer to as the B section of the song, or the bridge if you're into folk music a little more. And it's going to start with an open C chord. And we're covering all 8 beats, all 8th notes, with just arpeggiating the C chord. Thumb, thumb, index, middle, ring, middle, index, thumb. Then we're going to go to a G over B chord, but for this one, we're on the C. I'm going to move my middle finger up to the B and leave the pointer finger where it is. A normal G over B would be with the pinky or ring finger on this D on the B string, like that. But we're going to wait on that because we're going to hammer on from this 1 to that 3. Just like that. And we have 2 notes in a row on that string coming back down. So this is the first instance where we don't really arpeggiate the chord in a strict pattern. And notice when I did that, I went middle finger and then index. So middle finger on the 3rd fret here with the pinky. You're picking with my right hand, it's M. And then I'm using my index finger to pick it when it goes to 1. And then we hit what's called an A sus2 chord. And it's called a sus2 chord because we've taken the note that makes it either major or minor and just lowered it so that it's neither. We've replaced it with the 2nd degree of the scale instead of having a major 3rd or a minor 3rd. So it's going to have a bit of a spacier sound. Like that. And when you come back down, it'll be thumb, thumb, index, middle, ring, middle, and then when you hit the index, you're going to slide up to 5, and we start a descending melody in thirds. So we've got these 2 notes here, which is a C and an E, and then we're going to drop down to a B and a D, and then down again. I guess I would switch fingers at that point to an A and a C, and then we're going to open them both up and play the G and the B. It'll be G, B, G. So that section, let me play it full speed. Just like that. That is one of the more confusing parts of the song. When I teach this to my students, that's one of the parts that throws them off the most, is how to finger that part. So again, what I do is just a descending like that, and I find it pretty easy if you can think of it in that manner. Just a melody in thirds. But then we go back to our C chord, back to the G over B with the hammer on from the C to the D. And then we have sort of a cool cadence here. We're going to get back to that A sus2 chord. And it's not a slide. You're just going to jump up to the 9th fret and go 9 and 8. That's 9 on the 3rd string, 8 on the 1st string. And then just bar the 7th fret. It's a half bar. You're going to play the 3rd string and the 1st strings again. So and it's sort of in my music, there's actually a fermata right there, which indicates that you hold the note as long as you'd like before you start playing again. In the recording, it's actually a very brief pause. So now we're back on our main melody again, up to the F and then the F sharp, back to the F. And we're going to do the same descending pattern that we did the first time with the E, D, C. Sort of slow it down here. There's a bit of a slowing of the tempo there, then down to the 2nd fret. And then the ending, the big last chord, you're going to hit a standard A minor, slide your C from the 1st fret, the 1st finger, all the way up to the E on the 5th fret, and then flatten out. And you're going to go 5, 7, 8 right there. And then you just sort of have to jump into this big A minor chord at the end, but it's sort of an unconventional A minor. Notice that I started with my pinky on the 12th fret, and then I've got 10th fret on the 3rd finger, 9th fret on the pointer finger, and the 2nd finger is also taking the 10th fret. So it's, including the A string, it's 0, 10, 9, 10, 12. And you're just going to strum it with your thumb. And that's how you play Is There Anybody Out There using the PEMA system. Coming up next, we've got our special guest Lick of the Week with Stephen Kennedy. Stay tuned.
My name is Stephen Kennedy, and I'd like to thank Joe for having me on the show today. So for the Lick of the Week, I decided to find a piece that, well, more or less sounds like a guitar lick. And so this is an etude by the Cuban composer Leo Brouwer. So an etude is a study piece. Etude is a French word that means study. And a study piece is one that has a musical quality to it, but it's used to work on a specific technique or a group of techniques. And this piece has quite a few techniques that we can actually work out, and it's really cool. So it's from, Leo Brouwer wrote 20 etudes. They're titled Estudios, Sencillos. And so this is number 7 from that set. And the main thing that this works on are slurs, or better thought of as hammer-ons and pull-offs. And it actually uses 2 different types of slurs that we'll talk about after I play the piece. It also features lots of position shifts, as well as lots of expressive and dynamic markings that are great things to work on, especially for young guitar students. And then lots of rests in the piece. A lot of times guitarists, we don't like to observe rest, we just let our guitar sound, and so here we have to actually observe some rests. And then a lot of tone color changes where we maybe play closer to the bridge versus playing closer to the neck. And then also it's going to alternate between using lots of rest stroke and free stroke, which, to build on what Joe was talking about earlier with the PEMA system, we have a couple different ways that we can actually use our fingers to produce tone on the strings. So we'll get into all of that. I'm going to play the piece twice for you, first at more of a faster tempo, and then at a slower tempo following that. Now, at the beginning of the piece, the tempo marking is simply titled Lo más rápido posible, which means to play as fast as possible. So most guitarists like to hear those terms when they get to play something. So I'm not going to play it quite that fast, but this is a piece you can sort of let loose on. Now at a slower speed. Okay, so I want to kind of break this piece down, not maybe all the way through, but it is a relatively short piece, so I'm going to kind of talk about some of the different things involved. So to start out, we are in first position, and it starts out with a C minor chord, and then quickly jumps up to third position, and we're going to see some hammer-ons involved. So as far as the hammer-ons go, we're hammering from an open B string to the D, to the F there. So we get that figure three times in a row. Then, here at measure 4, we're going to start our descend with some pull-offs. Now, the type of pull-offs that we do here are what we call rest slurs, or rest pull-offs. And what that simply means is that when we pull our finger down, we want it to actually land into the adjacent string that we're pulling into. And you want to utilize that anytime you're pulling off to an open string. Because if you do the other type, which is called a brush rest stroke, or excuse me, a brush slur, which is probably the most common type, all the strings are going to ring open. So here's what that would sound like. So you hear all the other strings ringing along with that. So you want to be very careful with that and make sure your finger pulls into the and lands into the adjacent string. Then at measure 6, we get some expressive markings here. So to start with, we have a nice open E note, for an eighth note, and it's marked as a fortissimo. So we want that to be really loud and really powerful, very short as well. And then we come back with a very sweet chord, a major 7th interval, and it's marked as pianissimo, so very suddenly quiet. And so let me get into that little portion there so you can really hear the effect of that. Then if we jump ahead to measure 12, we get a section, we're going to the 6th string, and it's marked with a marcato. So we want this to be kind of loud and sort of aggressive. And here's what we get here. Again, it's going to be a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs. So again, what we want to do is make sure we're doing a rest pull-off when we have that open, when we play the B to the open E. So that finger has to fall into the A string. The other thing with the right hand, I'm using my index and middle here. You'll see different people do different things here, but I like the index and middle because it really gives you kind of that aggressive tone that I had mentioned. And we want to move just a little closer to the bridge to really bring that aggressiveness out. Whereas whereas if I play up here close to the neck, still a nice tone, but it doesn't have that aggressiveness that the bridge, the sound from near the bridge has. And then measure 14, we get kind of a similar thing on the first string, but we're going to have a crescendo here. So we're going to start really quiet and we're going to gradually get louder. Like so. And then we get kind of a lot of the same material sort of repeated in different manners, but the next thing I want to point out is at measure 20, we get the same figure that we've had before, where it's the open E with that nice major 7th at the end. However, in the score, he's marked it as sul ponticello, which means near the bridge. So he really wants us to get that really bright sound near the bridge. So, like that. And it's an essential feature of the classical guitars. We have so many options with tone. We have to be very careful and very mindful of where we place our fingers when we're plucking the strings, because I can be up here, very sweet tone, very bright tone. It depends on the piece how you want to, what sounds you want to bring out, but Leo Brouwer has indicated he wants the bridge. So make sure you observe that. And then at the very end, we really just have a series of kind of partial bits of the original lick. But in between each of those, there are rests, and so we have to be very careful to make sure that we follow those. So that's basically Etude number 7 in sort of a nutshell. So it's a great piece to work on lots of different techniques. And it's kind of an advanced piece. If we were to put a grading system on it, it would probably be somewhere, upper grade 3, maybe even into grade 4 in terms of the technique required. But really it just depends on the guitarist and where you're at. So hope you have a good time trying it out. And if you want to find out a little bit more about myself, you can go to my website, StephenKennedyGuitar.com. As well as find out more about classical guitar here in Central Iowa with my guitar society, the Heart of Iowa Classical Guitar Society. And our website is heartofiowaguitar.com. Thanks.
And now it's time for us to enter the tone zone. And this week we have something very special. So as you can see, I'm playing my Breedlove Organic Concerto Series. Man, this thing is a really nice guitar. I bought it at Riemann Music, and it is just amazing. I played it because it sounds amazing acoustic, but it also is an acoustic electric. And one of the more modern things they're doing is sticking the electronics inside the sound hole. So my volume and tone knobs, which is all I have, by the way, are right up in here. It affects the resonation a little less and leaves the acoustic tone a little more true. And as you can see, I'm plugged into the bottom. There's a 9-volt down here, too. So that all said, I'm running it through a Vox AC15, which is an electric guitar amp. And if you've ever plugged an acoustic guitar directly into an electric guitar amp, you'll notice that it doesn't sound the greatest. It works. I mean, it's just a little bit heavy on the high end. So what you need is called a preamp. And so what I've got here, our pedal of the week, is the Boss AD2 Acoustic PreAmp. And it's a pretty simple pedal, but it's unlike anything we've used before. So I want to demonstrate how it works. Again, here's my unaffected tone. And then I turn this on. I've got it set to my ideal setting for this show, but you can tell right away it just sounds a little less abrasive. Again, if I turn it off, sort of high-end, pitchy, take that off, and it just sounds a little more like a mic'd up acoustic, like there's a microphone in front of me. And when you're coming through a PA system, that's going to make a very big difference. So let's real quickly take a look at what all the knobs do. We've got one that says ambience, and I've got it at about the 2 o'clock position. Let's turn it all the way down. So I'll turn that back up to 12. You hear it makes, and I've also got some reverb on here, so there's some sort of built-in ambience too. That's coming from the amp itself. I'm going to turn that, we'll just dime it, take it all the way to, looks like it's about the 4 o'clock position. We'll just call it at 10. Got a nice percussive sound to it with that strum, which is sort of what you're looking for out of a good acoustic strumming sound. So I'm going to take that back to my 2 o'clock setting, and we're going to talk about the next knob over, which is the acoustic resonance. I'm going to take that down all the way. Whew. That made a big difference. You can tell it's a lot treblier. Treblier? It's a lot more trebly. So if that's not what you're looking for, we'll take it to about noon here. And then here it is all the way up. I kind of like it on the higher end there, having it takes a lot of the twang, a lot of that, it's got what's called a piezo pickup in it, and it just sort of takes away some of that resonance, some of the more unattractive qualities of a piezo, which do work really well, by the way. And then we've got one more that says notch on it. Let's find out what it does. Turn it all the way down to off. We'll take it up to 12 o'clock where I had it a second ago. And we'll turn it all the way up. You can definitely hear the difference in that one. You can really hear that affecting the sound. And that's our pedal of the week, the Boss AD2 Acoustic PreAmp. And now, folks, we got to talk about Blackbird. This classic Beatles song that Paul McCartney wrote, and he said in one of his concerts that he got this idea from trying to copy a Bach piece. It's actually Bourrée in E minor. But he didn't know how to play it, and neither did George Harrison. They were childhood friends, so they just sort of faked it. And what he ended up coming up with had included that little run in it. So what he ended up doing was using that premise and creating this song. I also heard at some point that he got the right-hand pick pattern from Donovan, who was another contemporary of his. If you don't know who Donovan is, you have some homework to do. But the real controversy here is that everybody on the internet gets this wrong. And I want to get it right. And I want you to get it right. So here's what I did. I looked up as many videos as I could of Paul McCartney actually playing this song. He has this thing where he comes out, tells everybody, if you play guitar, give me an applause, and they all start cheering. He says, a lot of you probably know this song, but all of you are playing it wrong. And then he plays it. And when you watch the instructional videos, the people who have seen him live tell this story, and then they teach the song wrong. They use the same pattern that the internet uses, and of course they're on the internet also, but the way they want to teach it is with 3 fingers, which is sort of a standard folk style, with an alternation between these 2 fingers and the pointer finger playing the open G string. And that is wrong. That is verifiably wrong. And if you watch Paul McCartney play this song, what you'll notice is that he is definitely only using 2 fingers, his thumb and his index finger, and he is plucking together and then swiping down with this pointer finger. And that comes to this pattern too. So this song contains two patterns. We have one that is a straight alternation, which is the first 3 beats of the song, here, and then like that. And that swipe sounds like it's only the open G string, but he's actually hitting both strings, like that. If you want it to sound a little more accurate, you can sort of release the chord, and that leaves just the open G string ringing, but it's still the same pattern. Then he comes up to the 12th and 10th frets, playing the interval known as a 10th also, where we've got the root and the third. And again, this is the more complicated pattern. And this is really the part that everybody gets wrong. What he's doing is hitting these 2 strings together, the 2nd and 5th strings. Then he's crossing his thumb over to hit the G string. And then the pointer finger comes up, thumb back on the 5th string, pointer finger back on the 2nd string, and then a strum. Like that. Now, it's fair to point out he doesn't play this song the same way every time. And why? He's Paul McCartney. He's earned the right to do whatever he wants. Take it up with him. But this pattern is the way he plays it in some of the more famous videos, and it's definitely the way he's playing it on the recording. So once again, that pattern, thumb and middle, or thumb and pointer finger, and then thumb crosses over from the 5th string to the 3rd string. So you go thumb and pointer. The pointer is really only going to hit the 2nd string or swipe downward in a strumming manner. So we've got thumb and pointer finger, and then thumb on the G string, pointer, thumb on the 5th string, pointer, and then a swipe. As you can see, the consequences of learning this the wrong way are heavy because it's hard to unlearn. But that pattern is really useful, and it's sort of a unique pattern. You don't really use that downward swipe very often unless you're also hitting the guitar. Sometimes you'll see that with sort of the thumb hit for a percussive sound, but in this case, he's just... It does have a bit of a percussive sound, but it's really just the way he wrote it, and it's a beautiful song, and I think you should play it the right way. And that's how you play Blackbird. Well, thanks for watching. I'm your host, Joe Alton. I want to thank our guest, Stephen Kennedy, for coming out here and showing us that, and be sure to check him out with the Heart of Iowa Classical Guitar Society and the Iowa Guitar Quartet, wherever they are playing. And I want to thank our producer, Jason Prine. I want to thank Riemann Music for offering up our Pedal of the Week this week. And I want to thank Mediacom for giving us a place to shoot this show. Be sure to check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/theguitardepartment. And be sure to check us out next time right here on MC22.